Okay, get this. Something absolutely wild just went down in global trade. The US just cut a massive deal with China, slashing tariffs. But here's the kicker. Their supposed ally, India, they got left out in the cold, paying more. So how on earth did this shocking reversal happen? Let's get into it.
All right, just look at the raw numbers here. It's pretty stark. China, the big rival, gets a 10-point tariff cut. A huge break. They go from 57% down to 47%. And India, the strategic partner, they're just stuck. Flat 50%. No deal, no relief, nothing.
So you gotta ask, right? What is going on here? This is the central mystery we're unpacking today. In a high-stakes showdown, how did the adversary get a better deal than the friend?
And to really get this, we've got to follow the money and the timeline. Because, make no mistake, this isn't just about hurt feelings or diplomatic snubs. We're talking about billions, with a B, of dollars. And huge numbers of jobs are on the line.
Okay, so check out how fast this all went down for China. It's kind of mind-blowing. India's been getting crushed by these tariffs for like 90 days. 90! Then, on October 9th, China plays its hand, and boom. Just 20 days later, they walk away with a deal. It was a lightning-fast power play.
So what does this stalemate actually cost India in the real world? Well, it's not pretty. We're looking at a potential hit of $15 billion a year. That's a huge chunk of their economy, absolutely hammering major industries like engineering, textiles, you name it.
You know, if you're the kind of person who wants to understand the real power plays happening behind the headlines, this is exactly what we do here every week. We dive deep into the messy stuff, trade wars, debt cycles, global strategy, to give you a clear look at what's actually going on.
So, the big question remains, how did China pull this off? Well, it really comes down to three things. Three brutal advantages that India just didn't have. We're talking leverage, scale, and urgency. Let's dig into each one.
First up, leverage. And China has the ultimate trump card. They control a staggering 90% of the world's rare earth minerals. Now, these aren't just some weird rocks. They're in literally everything, from your phone to an F-35 fighter jet. It's less of a commodity and more of a strategic weapon.
And that is the fundamental difference here. When China even hints at cutting off rare earths, it's not an economic problem. It's a national security crisis. It could literally shut down production lines for fighter jets and submarines. India's leverage, pharmaceuticals, is important, don't get me wrong, but it's an economic inconvenience. It makes healthcare more expensive, so you have one threat aimed at the Pentagon and another aimed at the consumer's wallet. Guess which one Washington is going to respond to first, every single time.
Reason number two is just raw scale. The numbers don't lie. The U.S.-China trade relationship is worth almost $660 billion. That is more than 3 times bigger than America's trade with India. And when you're dealing with a transactional mindset, the biggest player on the field is always going to get the most attention. It's just simple, cold, hard math.
All right, the third reason is a little more inside baseball, but it's absolutely crucial. It's all about something called de-dollarization. And what that really means is China's long-term plan to escape the grip of the US dollar, which, let's be honest, is the foundation of American global power.
And Han, China is not messing around. They are moving at lightning speed. Think about it. They went from doing almost none of their trade in their own currency to nearly half of it in just 15 years. They've even built their own financial messaging system to get around U.S. oversight. This isn't just about money, it's a direct challenge to America's place in the world. And that created a powerful sense of urgency in Washington to get a deal done, a kind of pressure India just couldn't bring to the table.
Okay, so let's flip this around. Put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine you're India's trade minister. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. What's your move? Do you give in? Do you fight back? Or is there a third way? I'm genuinely curious what you think, so drop your game plan in the comments below.
Because the truth is, there are no good options here. India is staring down a massive dilemma, and every path forward looks, well, pretty painful.
Okay, so option one, they could try to negotiate their way out with cash, basically go on a shopping spree. They could offer up, say, $10 or $15 billion in new defense contracts, big energy deals, anything to sweeten the pot. But the clock is ticking, and it would mean making some really tough political concessions, maybe even on things like their historic ties with Russia.
Option two is to go on the offensive, strategic retaliation. Hit them where it hurts, right? They could slap tariffs on things like American almonds and apples, products that come from key political states.
That would show strength back home for sure, but wow, is it risky. The US could retaliate with crippling 200 or 250% tariffs on Indian pharmaceuticals, which would be an absolute catastrophe for them.
Then there's option 3. Play the long game. Start to pivot away from depending so much on the US and focus on building stronger trade relationships with Europe and Asia. Now, this is without a doubt the smartest move for the future. But it's a but the size of a continent. It takes years, 3, 5, maybe more, to really work, and it does zero to help with the crisis they're in right now.
And let's not forget what's really at stake here. Behind all this strategy and politics, there's a human cost. This number, 750,000, that's how many jobs are on the line in India. 750,000 people whose livelihoods depend on this getting sorted out. That's the real weight on their shoulders.
So why would Washington do this to an ally? From their point of view, the math was just brutal and simple. The rare earths issue was a 5-alarm fire for national security. The farmer problem? It's a big deal, but it's fundamentally a healthcare cost issue. When you're forced to choose, you put out the fire that threatens to burn the whole house down first.
Putting together these kinds of deep dives, sifting through all the data, it takes a ton of time. So if you're getting value out of this and it's helping you make sense of the world, we'd be so grateful if you'd consider supporting our work. That's what lets us keep doing this. The link's in the description.
And what's really interesting, and maybe a little unsettling, is that this isn't the first time this has happened. Not by a long shot. If you look back through history, you see this pattern again and again. Sometimes, the US puts the biggest squeeze on its own friends. This idea actually goes way back. People were saying the exact same thing during the big US-Japan trade disputes back in the 80s. And the logic is kind of cold, but it makes a certain kind of sense. You can push your allies harder because, well, where are they going to go? They're not going to suddenly join the other team, so you can extract concessions from them that you just can't from a rival. All right, so let's boil this all down. What did we learn here? First, raw strategic leverage, like those rare earths, trumps political friendship every time. Second, size matters. The bigger trade partner gets the attention. Third, a threat to national security gets you a deal way faster than a threat to the economy. And lastly, let's be real, India's ties to Russia gave Washington the perfect excuse to turn the screws.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. In a world of these kinds of transactional politics, what does an alliance even mean anymore? Is it a real partnership, or is it just another bargaining chip to be used? Definitely something to think about. We'll see you in the next one.